Prophet Jacob, the grandson of Prophet Abraham, is lying sick in bed. He is in his 147th year, and the end is approaching rapidly. He summons his 12 sons and their families to his bedroom, and he blesses each son and foretells the future of his tribe. It is generally known as the Testament of Jacob, and is written in an elegant Hebrew style with a poetic touch. It contains a few words which are unique and never occur again in the Bible. The Testament recalls the varied events in the life of a man who has had many ups and downs. The greatest grief that befell him was the disappearance for many years of his favorite son Joseph. His descent into Egypt and his meeting with Joseph caused him great joy and the recovery of his lost sight. Jacob was a prophet and surnamed by God Israel, the name which was adopted by the 12 tribes that descended from him. Peace and blessings of God be on all of his prophets. The story of Jacob and his family is narrated in the book of Genesis, chapters 1. The famous prophecy, which may be considered as the nucleus of this testament, is contained in the 10th verse of the 49th chapter of Genesis as follows. The sceptre shall not depart from Judah, and the lawgiver from between his feet until the coming of Shiloh, and to him belongeth the obedience of peoples. This is the literal translation of the Hebrew text, as much as I can understand it. There are 2 words in the text which are unique and occur nowhere else in the Old Testament. The first of these words is Shiloh, and the other Yikah or Yikath, by construction or contraction. Shiloh is formed of 4 letters, Shin, Yod, Lamed, and Hai. There is a Shiloh, the proper name of a town in Ephraim, 1 Sam I, etc., but there is no Yod in it. This name cannot be identical with or refer to the town where the Ark of the Covenant or the Tabernacle was. For until then, no sceptre or lawgiver had appeared in the tribe of Judah. The word certainly refers to a person and not to a place. As far as I can remember, all the versions of the Old Testament have preserved this original Shiloh without giving it a rendering. It is only the Syriac Pshita that has translated it into he to whom it belongs. It is easy to see how the translator has understood the word as composed of ish-e, abridged form of Asher =, he that, and lo =, is his. Consequently, according to the Shitta, the clause will be read in the following manner: until he to whom it belongeth come, and etc. The personal pronoun it may refer to the sceptre and the lawgiver separately or collectively, or perhaps to the obedience in the 4th clause of the verse, the language being poetic. According to this important version, the sense of the prediction would appear to be plainly this: the royal and prophetic character shall not pass away from Judah until he to whom it belongs come, for his is the homage of people. But apparently this word is derived from the verb shala, and therefore meaning peaceful, tranquil, quiet, and trustworthy. It is most likely that some old transcriber or copyist currente calamo, and with a slip of pen, has detached the left side of the final letter het, and then it has been transformed into hai, for the 2 letters are exceedingly alike, being on very slightly different on the left side. If such an error has been transmitted in the Hebrew manuscript, either intentionally or not, then the word is derived from shalah, to send, delegate, the past participle of which would be shalu, that is, one who is sent, messenger. But there appears no reasonable cause for a deliberate change of het for hai, since the yod is preserved in the present shape of Shiloh, which has no vav that would be necessary for the past participle shalu. Besides, I think the Septuagint has retained the Shiloh as it is. The only possible change, therefore, would be of the final letter het into hai. If such be the case, then the word would take the form of Shiloh and correspond exactly to the messenger of Yah, the very title given to Muhammad alone, Rasul Allah, that is, the messenger of God. I know that the term Shiloh is also the technical word for the letter of divorce, and this because the divorced wife is sent away. I can guess of no other interpretation of this singular name besides the 3 versions I have mentioned. Of course, it goes without saying that both the Jews and Christians believe this blessing to be one of the foremost messianic prophecies. That Jesus, the prophet of Nazareth, is the Christ or Messiah, no Muslim can deny, for the Quran does acknowledge that title. that every Israelite king and high priest was anointed with the holy oil composed of olive oil and various spices we know from the Hebrew Scriptures, Leviticus 23:33. Even the Zardushti Koresh king of Persia is called God's Christ. Thus says the Lord to his Christ Cyrus, etc. Isa, XL1:7. It would be superfluous here to mention that although neither Cyrus nor Jesus were anointed by the sacred anointment, yet they are called Messiahs. As to Jesus, even if his prophetic mission were recognized by the Jews, his messianic office could never be accepted by them. For none of the marks or characteristics of the Messiah they expect are to be found in the man whom they attempted to crucify. The Jews expect a Messiah with the sword and temporal power, a conqueror who would restore and extend the kingdom of David, and a Messiah who would gather together the dispersed Israel unto the land of Canaan, and subdue many nations under his yoke. But they could never acclaim as such a preacher upon the Mount of Olives, or one born in a manger. To show that this very ancient prophecy has been practically and literally fulfilled in Prophet Muhammad, the following arguments can be advanced. By the allegorical expressions, the Sceptre and Lawgiver, it is unanimously admitted by the commentators to mean the royal authority and the prophecy, respectively. Without stopping long to examine the root and derivation of the second singular word, yika, we may adopt either of its two significations, obedience or expectation. Let us follow the first interpretation of Shiloh as given in the Shittah version, he to whom it belongs. This practically means the owner of the scepter and the law, or he who possesses the sovereign and legislative authority, and his is the obedience of nations. Who, then, can this mighty prince and great legislator be? Certainly not Moses, for he was the first organizer of the 12 tribes of Israel, and before him there never appeared a king or prophet in the tribe of Judah. Decidedly not David, because he was the first king and prophet descended from Judah. And evidently not Jesus Christ, because he himself repudiated the idea that the Messiah whom Israel was expecting was a son of David, Matten Sirkin 44:45, Mark 35:37, Luke 6:41-44. He has left no written law, and never dreamt of assuming the royal scepter. In fact, he advised the Jews to be loyal to Caesar and pay him tribute, and on one occasion the crowds attempted to make him a king, but he escaped and hid himself. His gospel was written on the tablet of his heart, and he delivered his message of good news, not in scripto but orally. In this prophecy, there is no question of the salvation from original sin by the blood of a crucified person, nor of a reign of a God-man over human hearts. Besides, Jesus did not abrogate the law of Moses, but he distinctly declared that he had come to fulfill it. Nor was he the last prophet, for after him St. Paul speaks of many prophets in the church. Prophet Muhammad came with military power and the Quran to replace the old Jewish worn-out scepter and the impracticable and old-fashioned law of sacrifices and of a corrupt priesthood. He proclaimed the purest religion of the one true God and laid down the best practical precepts and rules for morals and conduct of men. He established the religion of Islam, which has united into one real brotherhood many nations and peoples who associate no being with the Almighty. All Muslim peoples obey the Prophet of Allah, love and reverence him as the establisher of their religion, but never worship him or give him divine honor and attributes. He crushed and put an end to the last vestiges of the Jewish principality of Qurayda and Khaybar, having destroyed all their castles and fortifications. The second interpretation of the tetragram Shil, pronounced Shiloh, is equally important and in favor of Prophet Muhammad. As it was shown above, the word signifies tranquil, peaceful, trustworthy, quiet, and so forth. The Aramaic form of the word is shilya, from the same root, shala or shla. This verb is not used in Arabic. It is a well-known fact in the history of the Prophet of Arabia that previous to his call to the messengership, he was extremely quiet, peaceful, trustworthy, and of a contemplative and attractive character, that he was surnamed by the people of Mecca, Muhammad al-Amin. When the Meccans gave this title, Amin, to Muhammad, they had not the remotest idea of Shiloh, Yet the ignorance of the idolatrous Arabs was made use of by God to confound the unbelieving Jews who had scriptures and knew their contents. The Arabic verb amana, like the Hebrew aman, to be firm, constant, secure, and therefore to be tranquil, faithful, and trustworthy, shows that amin is precisely the equivalent of Shiloh and conveys all the significations contained in it. Prophet Muhammad, before he was called by God to preach the religion of Islam and to abolish the idolatry which he successfully accomplished, was the most quiet and truthful man in Mecca. He was neither a warrior nor a legislator, but it was after he assumed the prophetical mission that he became the most eloquent speaker and the best valiant Arab. He fought with the infidels sword in hand, not for his own personal interest, but for the glory of Allah and for the cause of his religion, al-Islam. He was shown by God the keys of the treasures of the earth, but he did not accept them, and when he died, he was practically a poor man. No other worshipper of God, whether a king or a prophet, has rendered such an admirably great and precious service to God and to man as Prophet Muhammad has done. To God in eradicating the idolatry from a large part of the globe, and to man by having given the most perfect religion and the best laws for his guidance and security. He seized the sceptre and the law from the Jews, fortified the former, and perfected the latter. If Prophet Muhammad were permitted to reappear today in Mecca or Medina, he would be met by the Muslims with the same affection and obedience as he saw there during his earthly life. And he would see with a deep sense of pleasure that the holy book he had delivered is the same without the least alteration in it, and that it is chanted and recited exactly as he and his companions did. He would be glad to congratulate them on their fidelity to the religion and to the oneness of Allah, and to the fact that they have not made of him a god or son of a god. As to the third interpretation of the name Shiloh, I remarked that it might possibly be a corruption of Shaluah, and in that case it would indisputably correspond to the Arabic title of the Prophet, so often repeated in the Quran, namely Rasul, which means exactly the same as Shaluah does, that is, a messenger. Shaluah Elohim of the Hebrews is precisely the Rasul Allah, which phrase is chanted 5 times a day by the crier to the prayers from the minaret of all mosques in the world. In the Quran, several prophets, particularly those to whom a sacred scripture has been delivered, are mentioned as Rasul. But nowhere in the Old Testament do we come across Shiloh or Shaluah except in the Testament of Jacob. Now, from whatever point of view we try to study and examine this prophecy of Jacob, we are forced, by the reason of its actual fulfillment in Prophet Muhammad, to admit that the Jews are vainly expecting the coming of another Shiloh, and that the Christians are obstinately persisting in their error in believing that it was Jesus who was intended by Shiloh. Then there are other observations which deserve our serious consideration. In the first place, it is very plain that the scepter and the legislator would remain in the tribe of Judah so long as the Shiloh does not appear on the scene. According to the Jewish claim, Shiloh has not come yet. It would follow, therefore, that both the royal scepter and the prophetical succession were still in existence and belonged to that tribe. But both these institutions have been extinct for over 13 centuries. In the second place, it is to be observed that the tribe of Judah also has disappeared together with its royal authority and its sister, the prophetical succession. It is an indispensable condition for the maintenance of a tribal existence and identity to show that the tribe as a whole lives either in its own fatherland or elsewhere collectively and speaks its own language. But with the Jews, the case is just the reverse. To prove yourself to be an Israelite, you need hardly trouble yourself about it, for anybody will recognize you, but you can never prove yourself to belong to one of the 12 tribes. You are dispersed and have lost your very language. The Jews are forced to accept one or the other of the 2 alternatives, namely, either to admit that Shiloh has come already, but that their forefathers did not recognize him, or to accept the fact that there exists no longer a tribe of Judah from which Shiloh will have to descend. As a third observation, it is to be remarked that the text clearly implies, and much against the Judeo-Christian belief, that Shiloh is to be a total stranger to the tribe of Judah and even to all the other tribes. This is so evident that a few minutes of reflection are sufficient to convince one. The prediction clearly indicates that when Shiloh comes, the scepter and the lawgiver will pass away from Judah. This can only be realized if Shiloh be a stranger to Judah. If Shiloh is a descendant of Judah, how could those two elements cease to exist in that tribe? It could not be a descendant of any of the other tribes either, for the scepter and the lawgiver were for all Israel, and not for one tribe only. This observation explodes the Christian claim as well, for Jesus is a descendant of Judah through Mary. I very often wonder at these itinerant and erring Jews. For over 25 centuries they have been learning 100 languages of the peoples whom they have been serving. Since both the Ishmaelites and the Israelites are the offspring of Abraham, what does it matter to them whether Shiloh comes from Judah or Zebulun, from Esau or Issachar, from Ishmael or Isaac, as long as he is a descendant of their father Abraham?